So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tina Packard, and I am the LIEAP program manager for the state. So as far as LIEAP goes, the buck stops with me. I just wanted to touch base with everyone. The purpose of this call for me is to just kind of get some feedback as to what types of things you all are seeing in your communities, maybe offer, some collaboration here, and just to keep you informed about what is happening with LIEAP at our level, and what the expectation is, and kind of what we're doing now while we're in this shutdown period, which I know is about to end. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that we will hear some news soon. But just kind of letting you know, even though it is, we're hoping that it will open up soon, that it's not going to be a super fast fix on our end. So LIEAP is a federally funded program, which means that we don't receive any state funding. Everything comes from the federal government. It is an appropriation that we receive every year. And since they did not pass a budget or any type of spending bill, that means that at this point we don't have funding for the 25-26 season. So just kind of a high level, we're allowed to use a certain amount of carryover funds from last year to start the season, and we have obligated all of that. I think by the 15th of October was when we had obligated all of that, with the expectation that we would have additional funding coming, which is usually how it works. And because that didn't happen, at this point we have paused approval of applications. So anyone whose application was approved prior to when we stopped approving benefits on 10/15, their benefits have not been affected. They've been able to, their utility companies will be able to bill us, and we will continue to pay those invoices. But anyone who applied or who didn't have an approval on October 15th, then their applications are all sitting in a queue. They're waiting to be processed. But because of the way our system works, we haven't been able to do any approvals or even finish determining the eligibility for them. We are our messaging pretty consistently has been, we want people to continue to apply. We want people to continue to turn in those verifications, for asking for them, because we are processing applications to the point of approval, or to the point of determination. I shouldn't say approval, because not everyone will be approved, but we're processing to that point. And then once we are notified, and get our funding all sorted, then we'll be able to just go in and do, a determination on those all at once. So what I've seen, the biggest impact on right now are those folks who are using deliverable fuels like propane, wood, pellets, because we're not able to help with that immediate need, and the crisis, right? So those people who have got a disconnect or they need a deposit, things along those lines are where we're seeing the largest impact right now. And so that's just kind of an update from me. I'm in real close talks with our federal partners, well, those who are working, but we have some liaisons there, and we have the National Energy Directors Association, which is in Washington, D.C., so they keep a real close eye on what's going on, and they're telling us that once the government reopens, depending on how they determine to fund it, whether they say we're going to give you the standard CR amount, which would be that we would get 90% of the funding that we got last year, so then we know what the amount is, or if it's a new appropriation, we won't know that for sure until the president signs it, and then we get some correspondence there. So it could still be another 3 to 4 weeks before we're able to start approving applications again, even after the government reopens. That's just kind of what our timeline looks like. It could be longer. We're hoping that it's not going to be, But just trying to, just be as transparent as we can as to what that's going to look like, right? As far as when we're going to be able to start approving applications to help with those utility bills. So at this point, that's my update. I kind of just wanted to open it up to see what you are seeing in your community, and what we can do to support that, or support each other, basically. Susan?
Hi, Tina. For those of you that don't know me, camera's all wonky. For those that don't know me, I am Susan Carr. I'm the Executive Director of Community Services Network of Wyoming. And Tina, I wanted to thank you for your clear, transparent communications throughout this whole process. I think you have just done a tremendous job. I know this has been incredibly difficult for your office and all the way up to the federal office. I know these people are working their tails off trying to get this money out the door. Thank you for your transparency. There are some counties, not all counties in the state of Wyoming, are spending their community service block grant funding to be able to work with individuals who are eligible for utility assistance. However, there are some. I would urge you to reach out to your community action agencies. This can look like CAP-NC or CALC in Laramie County. There's different subrecipients in Sweetwater County, Sheridan, all across the state that may have some money available for individuals to be able to access as they are going into these cold snap months. Tina's office and Community Action across the state work closely together to make sure that we are supplementing each other and working the best we can together. So I would urge you to reach out to your agency in your county if you have any questions. If you do not know who those agencies are in your county, I'm going to put the link in the chat so you can find them. And this will be, it's not 100% of the answer. It is only a tide over for a temporary amount of time, and it's not available in every county. There are eligibility pieces around that too, but this link will give you a little bit more information. But Tina, thank you again for your clear, consistent communications. I appreciate you.
And that's been a goal of mine, is to just really try to get as much information as we can out there to let our folks know what's going on. I can tell you that I visited with the Align office the other day just to kind of get I'm sure, well, I talk to them every day, but, really just trying to find out, okay, what are people saying when they're calling? Do we have people that are super upset? And for the most part, we are not seeing that in the call volume. Their call volume has been very low. The number of applications that are coming in every day is very low. And so what I would ask of you is, as you are seeing clients who are coming in that are going to need that utility assistance, to have them apply now and get their verifications in and do all of that, so that once, because I know that we're going to see a surge, right? Once we announce it and say, hey, we're able to start doing those approvals again, we're going to see a surge in phone calls, we're going to see a surge in applications, and just to make sure that we are, I kind of want to spread it out, right? So try to get it done while the volume is low and get those ready to be approved, so that we don't end up with, people that end up really being in a bind, or, waiting so much longer to get their applications approved once we are able to start doing that again. So that's something we're really doing. I also have, and I'm going to drop this link in the chat. If you haven't signed up for our updates, here's the link to do that. And there's a button on there that just says sign up for LIEAP updates. That's our stakeholder message. And so we put any messaging that we're doing for updates about the program. That's a really good way to stay informed, because those go to everybody. So even though, we update on socials and the website and whatever, this will be an email that'll come directly to you. We don't really spam you too much. Usually we send those about every other week, I think, during the season, just to kind of let people know what our numbers are and what our status is. or if there are program updates. And so it's super important at this time right now, that's where we're going to be communicating directly regarding any, any changes in the status to the program, things like that. Does anyone else have anything to offer? What are you seeing in your agencies?
We are seeing a lot of people. This is Sherry with Sweetwater Family Resource in Sweetwater County. A lot of people with shut-off notices, past due balances, things like that. We're definitely encouraging them to all sign up now. We have the printed sheets that are, are you registered for services and zero income and your landlord tenant form? We have all those printed out. We're handing them out freely so that people can have those signed by the appropriate parties and filled out so that when they upload them, or on the upload page, they're prepared to upload those and have those documents ready. Anybody who maybe doesn't have access to computer or is not computer savvy or any of those kind of things, or don't want to do it on their phone, we are definitely helping them apply, but we are encouraging them to apply. Yes, right. Now get in there, get in the queue, get it done. We just did a PSA on our end that basically said, here are the steps to take during all of this, all of these fun times, right? Number one, pay your rent or talk to your landlord. Number two, apply for LIEAP. 3, call your utility companies. And 4, then we'll work on the food resources. Because I know a lot of people are buying food instead of
in their utilities,
rent and paying their utilities. And there are a lot more food resources, and I'm so proud of our community, and I'm sure other communities in the state are the same. Everybody stepped up to the plate for food, right? I mean, anybody and everybody, oh my gosh. I mean, they're just coming out of the woodwork, which is very heartwarming and wonderful to see. So please don't spend your money on food. Please spend your money on your rent and on your utilities to the best of your ability, and use these food resources for food until SNAP opens back up again. So hopefully this helps. We are doing what we can, like Susan said, to bridge that gap a little bit, maybe keep you on for another month, pay the most past due. But our funding is limited as well as everybody else's. So, but we are trying our very best to bridge that.
I know you are, and I appreciate you all so much.
When you're back up again, but I know, yeah, and I am with Susan on thank you for being transparent, for sending out tips and tricks on what to tell people, and just helping us through all this, because there is a sense of panic, and people are, like you said, they're not really mad, but they're really scared. I think that's the biggest thing. They're not really coming at us with a vengeance. They're just scared and are not sure what to do. And so many of these people, especially the elderly, the disabled, they rely on LIEAP every single year. And so they're sitting here going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do now. Right. So it's just that panic moment.
And
I was going to say, Sherry, I wanted to just echo what you were saying. The other thing that we're looking at and what we're seeing, we're going to be seeing people for the first time reaching out who have never accessed federal benefits before due to shutdown, whether they be federal employees that were furloughed or anything like that don't know how to navigate this. And so a lot of times just a warm hand on the back showing them how to navigate this can go a really long way. Just be aware that not everybody has ever been in this situation before and doesn't necessarily know how to navigate it.
And I think something too that, and like I said, you all see this way more than I do because you are, on the front line and dealing with people directly. I usually only get the people that are super mad, or who can't get a hold of anyone else. And so, it's just been real important to know. I mean, and like I said, you all know better than I do, that we are seeing people that are just, they're scared. And I think for me, that has been the most impactful. And if we could possibly find any sort of a silver lining in all of this turmoil, it would be that maybe it brings to the forefront the need in our state for programs that can help supplement or provide additional services during a time like this, right? When we don't have those programs to fall back on. Sherry, go ahead.
One other thing, we don't have a lot of people who are on propane or wood. I know we have a couple that get a hold of us every year. But are there resources for those folks? And like I said, there's not a lot of people in our community that rely on that, but there are a couple, but I'm sure in other communities, the need is much greater for propane and wood. Does anybody help with those? Because those aren't normally things we help with unless it's a one-time really small, somebody's living in their camp trailer and they've got one of the little propane tanks and it's, $15 to fill. We can generally do that. But to fill the big household tanks, we usually don't do that, generally speaking. But are there resources that help with those different types of energy sources?
Well, and I have been in pretty close contact with the utility companies. I'm holding a meeting for them every couple of weeks. And that has been our biggest concern, right? Like, none of the utility companies have straight up said, we're not going to shut people off, right? They haven't said that. They have said things like, have the client let us know if they've applied for LIEAP. And so it has been, we've had some of that. But you're right, Sherry, that's, those are the ones that we're most worried about, because some of the bigger utility companies can say, hey, we'll put you on a payment plan, or, we'll extend your shut off or whatever until this all gets sorted out. But it's a whole lot different with those deliverable fuels, because that's almost retail, right? And so I don't know if there are places that help with that. I know it's a one-time thing. And for the most part, it is for LIEAP as well. When we pay those, is that it's a one-time payment, buying a cord of wood or buying them 3 cords of wood that'll last for the winter, and, doing a propane fill. And, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of people that need help with getting a tank set or renting a tank, or they're out of pellets or they're out of wood. And so those are the ones that I'm seeing are having the most impact on them right now from what we're seeing. Anybody have ideas on resources?
I just put one in the chat. CSBG can be used to buy permits for wood. Maybe a partnership that you could find in your community is partnering with a local scouting group, or your football team, Rotary members, Kiwanis members, any of your social organizations, to see if you were to go, if an agency were able to purchase firewood permits, they would be willing to go out and cut, chop, and distribute. So that is really keeping your local resources and your local community members involved in helping their neighbors. And you could probably get a little bit more. It might not be a ton, but again, we're not talking about bridging a long period of time. We're talking about a month or 2 months more only that we're having to bridge. That doesn't help with pellets unless you have donations of pellets or propane purchases in your community, but definitely something that you might want to ask for, because those are things that some other federal funds can be used for if you partner with the agencies in your community. I know in Sheridan, our football team is required to do a certain number of community service hours. That might be right up their alley of something that they would want to participate in.
Those are great ideas. I love it. Could we revamp if the opportunity presents itself, which I don't know that it will here necessarily, but if we did need to go that direction, can our contract be adjusted to buy those permits? because that wasn't an original ask in our original contract and our grant request.
Sure, Sherry, are you asking me for CSBG funding?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So yes, one of the things around community action is your responsibility in expending funds for the alleviation of poverty in your community is to be able to respond immediately to need. And that is worth a communication or a conversation that you have with your grantee. I know your grantee is the Sweetwater County Tripartite Board, but there is always flexibility built into your particular funds. This would just fall under housing. And if you have money already allocated to housing, then you already have the money in your budget and it doesn't require a line item budget. But if you have any specific questions around that, obviously go to Christina. She would be able to help you. But your state office at Health and Human, or not Health and Human Services, at the Department of Health can also answer those questions for you. One of the most exciting things about CSBG funding is its flexibility to respond. And so there are in your contracts, usually it's in that 20% range. If you stay under a 20% line item allocation, it doesn't require approval. But if you have money budgeted to housing, you would be able to use that funding there. You would just need to work with the state to add utilities assistance in on your mapping. Sorry, that was probably a lot of gibberish for those of you that aren't doing CSBG, but the agencies in your community are, and so that might be helpful.
Does anyone else have any input or questions or anything that I can answer? Any trouble with people applying for LIEAP or, you know, getting assistance on that end? Everything's going pretty smoothly, except for they're not getting an approval letter.
Hi, I have a question. This is Anastasia from the Downtown Clinic in Laramie. So once you reopen the program, will our clients have to submit any additional paperwork, like more updated pay stubs or anything like that?
They should not. The
Okay.
exception to that would be if they were, like, if they had a disconnect notice when they applied, we will be reaching out to them to make, you know, just to get updated information on that.
Okay.
And so I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say that and then I didn't get there. Because, you know, we may have people who had a disconnect when they first applied and it didn't get processed before we had to pause. And so we know that those amounts are going to be different, right? Like they might have had to pay it, they've gotten assistance with paying it. So we just are going to make sure that those are current. And so once we get a little bit, once we have an idea of what that timeline is going to look like, I'll send out some messaging to all of those folks directly. And then also, you know, just put out some messaging saying, hey, if you're still in a disconnect status, please let us know, send us a new notice, you know, something along those lines. And there are quite a few of those. We addressed as many of them as we could. It just was, it was fast and furious, right? Like one day we had a ton of money and the next day we were like, whoa, we don't have any money left. So, I mean, and I'm sure that's where everybody kind of is right now, is that the need is high.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I also have another question for Susan. On the CSNO website, you said go to the bottom to see what resources are available in our county. And I don't see like where exactly do I look for the Albany County?
Yeah, thank you. Albany County is not a member of CSNO. You can go to,
okay.
That's okay. But in Albany County, I'll just answer your question. There's Family Promise, your agency.
Yep, I know about that. Yeah, we work with them.
Interfaith is one, and that's managed by the county for, I'm trying to remember the other one. Where's Pete Gosar at?
The Downtown Clinic.
That's the Downtown Clinic. Okay, and then there's the reproductive health. And then I think the domestic violence shelter receives some of that funding as well. But mostly it's going to be Interfaith of Albany County and Family Promise of Albany County that specialize excuse me, in housing issues. And
Yeah.
so they would be the ones I would reach out to or refer to.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I knew about that. I wasn't sure if there were any additional resources. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I don't want to keep everyone on too long. I know everyone's time is valuable. So if does anyone else have anything to offer? If not, I will keep in touch as much as I possibly can. And, just know that we really appreciate all of you supporting DFS through all of this. There just really it's been a lot. And like Sherry said, it's been super encouraging to see the efforts that have been put forward by our communities, as far as food goes. We know that there's a large gap for utilities, and assistance there. There just is not a lot of, there's really no other option than going to, the community action agencies or their local agencies. And so that's something that, we'll continue to work on. And I just want you to know that I just appreciate all of you and the work that you're doing to help keep our families safe in their homes. And so with that, I think we'll close. Thanks everyone for coming.